Hey, welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review from a pretty exciting Austrian Grand Prix. So we'll start right away. So Verstappen started on pole with Leclerc alongside on the front row. Of course, Magnussen and De Vries both started from the pit lane after deciding to change engine component or change parts of their car after park Ferme conditions. So Sky was expecting a mix of 1 and 2 stop strategies. Turned out that wasn't really the case. And with most drivers starting on the mediums, except for Alonso starting on the hards, it looked to be a pretty interesting race. So Verstappen had a really good start, but a really poor start by Stroll, who kind of got caught out at turn 1, kind of getting pinched on the apex of turn 1. Alonso had a pretty good start and was up to, I believe, fifth place, I believe. And some damage for Tsunoda, who basically damaged his front wing on the first corner and then basically went through the gravel at turn 4, but was able to continue. That being said, there was a safety car that came out, and Magnussen and Tsunoda both pit. The safety car on lap 2 came in at the end of the lap after going through the pit lane, so it was very clean and a very good restart for Verstappen. Lap 5, Perez overtook Ocon for P12 at turn 3, and then a couple laps later, on lap 8, this was a bit frustrating, I thought. Sainz was gaining on Leclerc quite a bit, and he was coming up right to the back of him, but Ferrari effectively just made him hold position behind Leclerc. And at the same point, Stroll got past Hulkenberg for P7, that position he had lost, one of the positions he had lost at the start. Lap 9, Hamilton comes on the radio saying that he has some brake issues, but there's some really close battling. For him, it didn't seem to be a problem, and also there's some really close battling between Perez and Russell. So lap 10, Perez finally overtakes Russell at turn 4 after having what looked like a bit of contact at turn 3, but it looked like there was no damage done to either car. Sainz is then told not to attack. Yes, this is the other point, the second time, when this time it was much more direct. Sainz not being told not to attack his teammate Leclerc. Gasly overtook Hulkenberg for P8, so Hulkenberg's race, just like the sprint yesterday, doesn't have the tire management in the Haas to be able to hold the position that he qualifies in. Hulkenberg then pits, and Norris is at this point very close to Hamilton. Perez overtakes Albon for P9 at turn 3, so Perez continuing to make progress. And Hamilton is actually the first driver to get a black and white flag for track limits, and this would be a big talking point throughout the race. Lap 14, yellow flags in Sector 2. Hulkenberg's car basically started smoking and breaking down, and he has to pull over at the side of the track, and this deploys the VSC, the virtual safety car. Lap 15, the following lap, Norris and Hamilton both pit under VSC, on top of many others who pit as well. And this is kind of where, for both Ferrari and for Aston Martin, I think they made a mistake. They waited a lap and pit the following lap, and they double stacked both drivers and pit the second lap, which makes absolutely no sense, especially when both of them were so close on track. It seems like they kind of hesitated with making the decision to pit or not. But both of them lose. The second drivers in both cases lost tons of position. Sainz was behind both Hamilton and Perez, I believe, at this point. And Stroll was basically dumped all the way back into 15th after being in 7th. So really rough for both of them. Hamilton, right after the VSC ends, is given a 5-second penalty for track limits. And he is absolutely livid. Throughout the race, he was just on the radio constantly kind of going on about this. Lap 18, possible unsafe release for Ocon, and Tsunoda was given a 5-second penalty for track limits. Lap 19, Sainz overtakes Hamilton for P4 at turn 4, so Sainz has lost that position as a result of Ferrari deciding to do the double stack a lap too late, and he comes out so he's able to get ahead. In the following lap, a bit surprising to me, he overtakes Perez at turn 4 for P3, so the Red Bull actually being overtaken by Ferrari. I know they're on different tire strategies, but still it was kind of impressive to me and a bit surprising. And I thought, Sainz was having great pace early in the race, and I think he really basically got screwed over by Ferrari basically telling them to hold position. Lap 22, like I mentioned, Hamilton extremely unhappy on the radio, asking about Perez being on, over track limits, but he was catching Perez at that point as well. Sainz also gets a black and white flag for track limits. Hamilton tries to go around the outside of turn 4, but around Perez, but it doesn't stick. Lap 23, Piastri gets some front wing damage. He basically just went a little bit too deep at turn 3 and kind of clipped his front wing on the rear tire of Magnussen, damaged the front wing and had to pit. So unfortunate for him. Lap 25, Verstappen, so the Red Bulls didn't pit under the VSC. They decided to pit under green flag conditions, and he actually comes out third. So that 200-something lap streak of consecutive laps led, that comes to an end. Finally, going all the way back to the Miami Grand Prix, I believe, he finally doesn't lead a lap, comes out third after his pit stop, and following lap, Perez pits as well for hard tires. Ocon gets a 5-second penalty for that unsafe release I mentioned earlier. And Verstappen quickly starts gaining on the Ferraris ahead. He gets past Sainz at turn 4 after cutting back at turn 3, so he gets in the very next lap. Lap 26, Perez overtakes Ocon for P10 at turn 4, and then following 2 laps later, he gets Albon for P9 at turn 3 as well. So Perez continuing to make up ground after a poor qualifying on Friday. Lap 28, Norris overtakes Hamilton at turn 4 for P4, so a really good move by Norris, who's having an absolutely fantastic race in the McLaren, I thought. Lap 29, Sainz gets a 5-second penalty for track limits, so many drivers getting these penalties for track limits. Tsunoda noted for not serving a penalty properly under his pit stop, so he was given another 5-second penalty for that to add to his pretty miserable day. Lap 30, Perez overtakes Russell for turn 3 for P8. Lap 32, Hamilton closing in on Norris, and Gasly gets black and white flag for track limits as well, and Albon too immediately after. Lap 34, Verstappen is starting to close in on Leclerc ahead and finally gets the move done at turn 3 for the lead of the race on lap 35. And Perez overtakes Gasly as well for P7 at turn 3. At this point, and then the same lap, De Vries decides that one moment in 2 races is enough and decides to go for another moment, another tango with Kevin Magnussen by shoving him into the gravel around the outside of turn 6, and he was rewarded with that with a 5-second penalty. So a bit of a clumsy race by De Vries as well. And immediately after, Albon is given a 5-second penalty for track limits. Lap 37, black and white flag for Stroll, and he immediately pits for new hard tires and he comes out in 15th. So a really odd strategy by the Aston Martins on Stroll. I don't know if he had damage, or I don't know if he was just chewing through his tires too much. Lap 40, Hamilton is still complaining on the radio about track limits. Lap 41, Ocon pits, and lap 42, Norris pits as well. So Stroll started the train of drivers pitting for their second time. Gasly was under investigation for track limits and of course was given a 5-second penalty just like everyone else. Russell and Hamilton and Albon pit, and Perez overtakes Alonso for P5. Lap 43, Hamilton boxes and has to serve his 5-second penalty, so he actually comes out behind, quite far behind where he was before. Russell overtakes Sargent for P9 at turn 3, and Alonso and Gasly both pit, and they come out 6th and 10th respectively. Sainz pits, and he comes out 4th, I believe. And then Norris, what was this? Oh yeah, so this was some really good battling between, let's see, yeah, so Sainz then overtook Norris as well after pitting, and Leclerc pits and comes out 3rd at this point, I believe, yes. Alright, last page of notes. I promise we'll get to the end eventually. Lap 49, Verstappen makes a second stop and he pits and comes out in 1st. Perez pits the following lap just like with the first stop, and he pits for Hartz and comes out in 5th. So he made up a lot of ground on that second stint and comes out in a much higher position than he did after the first stint. Lap 54, Tsunoda gets a 10-second penalty for track limits, so not great for Tsunoda, I believe. He was the only one who got a second penalty for track limits. Really close battling between Norris and Sainz as well at that point. And lap 55, much to my surprise, Stroll pit again, so from 9th place. So I don't know if there was an issue with the car or if he was just chewing through his tire too much, but it was a bit of a surprise to me given that the odds of him getting back into that P9 that he was in were very low. Lap 56, Perez has caught up to the back of Norris after making a second stop. Had a bit of a good battle, but then there's such a massive pace differential between that McLaren and the Red Bull, and Perez overtakes Norris at turn 4 for P4. Lap 58, Perez tries to make a move at turn 4 on Sainz, and I thought this was really excellent battling between Perez and Sainz. It was right on the edge of being clean, but they kept it clean. There was no contact, I believe, and it was really exciting to watch. But lap 62, Perez eventually gets past Sainz, overtakes him at turn 4 for P3. Stroll was starting to close in on Albon at this point on lap 64, and eventually gets the move done to move up into the points P10 at turn 4. Lap 66, Sargent was given a 5-second penalty for track limits, and Magnussen was as well. So pretty much almost everyone, over half the grid I believe, was given a penalty for track limits. Lap 68, great action at the back between Bottas, Tsunoda, and Magnussen. Of course, it wasn't for points, but it was basically just for pride. In lap 68, Verstappen decides that he wants to pit for fastest lap, despite the team saying that they don't want to take the risk. But he's like, no, I want to go for fastest lap. So they pit him for fastest lap so he can go for it on the final lap. And he comes out with only about 3 seconds or so to spare on Leclerc, so it was a bit close there. And let's see what else. That same lap, Perez got a black and white flag for track limits. Doesn't get the penalty though, as far as I'm aware. And he gets the fastest. Verstappen duly takes the fastest lap on the final lap to take the checkered flag to win the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix. Wins his 5th race in a row, and I believe his 4th Austrian Grand Prix win. Of course, 5th at this track, including the Styria Grand Prix that we had in 2020 and 2021, I believe he won. So let's go over the race result. So first Verstappen, second Leclerc, third Perez, fourth Sainz, fifth Norris. A really excellent race for him, and I'll be talking a bit more in my power rankings tomorrow. Sixth Alonso quietly had a pretty decent race. I think he got the most out of the Aston. Seventh Hamilton, eighth Russell, ninth Gasly, 10th Stroll to round out the points. 11th Albon, 12th Ocon, 13th Sargent, 14th Show, 15th De Vries, 16th Bottas, 17th Piastri, a bit of a rough race for him, 18th Tsunoda, another rough race for him, 19th Magnussen, and 20th, your only retirement was, of course, Nico Hülkenberg. So let's go over the championship standings. So Verstappen extends his lead in the championship, 229 points over Perez with 148. So that's an 81-point lead in the championship for Verstappen. Third was Alonso with 129 points. Fourth Hamilton, 108 points. Fifth Sainz with 86. Sixth Leclerc with 72, who catches up a bit to his teammate Sainz and does pass George Russell in seventh with 70 points. Stroll stays in eighth with 43 points. I think he's going to be glued there all season, eighth place. Ninth is Ocon with 31 points. 10th is Norris, who has a really good solid haul of points today, moves up with 22. 11th is Gasly with 17. 12th is Hülkenberg with 9. 13th is Albon with 7 points. 14th is Piastri with 5. 15th is Bottas also with 5. Zhou with 5, also with 5 as well in 16th. 17th and 18th are Tsunoda and Magnussen with 2 points each. And then rounding out the championship are Sargent and De Vries with no points. Just looking at the Constructors' Championship, let's see, Red Bull are in first place by an absolutely massive margin, 377 points. Mercedes second with 178, and Aston Martin only 6 points behind, 172. Ferrari got a lot of points, good points this weekend, 158 points for them, and gaining only 20 points behind the Mercedes. Alpine, long way back in fifth, 48 points, but McLaren got caught up to them a bit today, 27 points for them. Haas, of course, passed Alfa Romeo after the sprint yesterday because of Hülkenberg's great race, 11 points for them compared to Alfa Romeo's 9. Williams are ninth with 7 points, and AlphaTauri rounds out the Constructors' Championship with 2 points. So overall, pretty good race, I thought. Like I said in the preview before the race weekend, I was really hoping that there was a bit of a mix-up in the grid, that we'd have, a wet qualifying, a dry qualifying, a wet sprint, a dry race, just to have a bit of a mix-up. Of course, you can't really choose the weather when you race, but, I thought it was quite exciting, and I didn't feel like the sprint really ruined or revealed the result of the race, kind of like I felt like it did in Baku. So overall, really exciting race, lots of overtaking. Of course, not much really for the lead. Verstappen really had it under control the whole way through. But that being said, I think from the third podium position down, I think there was a possibility that quite a few drivers could have ended up on that podium if things had gone slightly differently. But that's all for my review for the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix. Of course, I'll be back tomorrow with my power rankings after every race. So that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.